You know, I love Spider-Man. I grew up watching the Raimi movies and all the movies after that as well, and I usually watch the TV shows. I never really got to read the comics when I was younger, as I didn't live near a comic book store and I didn't know where the nearest one was. So I wasn't at all aware of what Peter Parker got up to in his comic books. I just knew what he was doing in the TV series and all that. But now that I'm a somewhat stable adult who makes good financial decisions, this is a really cool sword, by the way. Don't question how much it was. I've been able to catch up on a bit of Spider-Man's comic book past. And I have to say, they love to traumatize this poor man. Like, I could focus on just the main comic book version of Peter Parker. No alternate reality ones, nothing like the Ultimate Universe or anything like that. No spin-off series, no nothing. Just the main 616 Peter Parker from the comic books. And he still will have a giant list of horrible life events. Now, of course, all characters have to have a little trauma to help build their personality and add to the story, you know? Tony had a magnet for a heart after being hit by his own missile. Bruce Wayne lost his parents in an alleyway that was literally named Crime Alley. I still have no clue what made them go down that one. And Luke Skywalker learnt that his father was an emo cyborg. You know, that's a bit traumatizing. And so it's not surprising for Peter to go through the ringer a little on the trauma train. But you would honestly think that it would just be the passing of his Uncle Ben, which everyone should know of, and for nothing to really top that, right? Well, the writers saw him lose his uncle, his, like, closest father figure he had growing up, and laughed at how soft of a decision that was, because they then not only took away his girlfriend's father, but they decided that wasn't enough and took her as well. What I'm talking about is the loss of George Stacy, at the time being a New York City police captain who perished when attempting to save a kid. But of course the blame was placed on Spider-Man, because it always is. Then in a later issue, Green Goblin kidnaps Gwen Stacy and throws her off a bridge. Peter attempted to save her using his webs, but he unintentionally ended her. What's even more messed up though is that afterwards the Jackal showed up. He's one of Spider-Man's many villains, and cloned the recently passed woman Gwen Stacy. And at the time, Peter had just gotten into a proper relationship with Mary Jane. So this was like super messed up. He had mourned, he'd done everything, and he just got back together. Imagine losing someone you saw your future with, their passing technically being partially your fault, mourning and grieving and recovering from that event, moving on and falling in love again, then bam, she's back from the dead. Now, whilst this clone wouldn't stick around, leaving New York City a little after the events, a certain black suit would, as he would later get his Venom suit, which wasn't named the Venom suit at the time, but I prefer calling it that. Now, whilst it wasn't very deadly for him at the beginning, just going out and fighting crime for him while he was asleep, it would later become very sentient and very angry and hungry. Now, whilst I wouldn't say that it's traumatizing, I would say that knowing that this murderous pile of goop was once on you is enough to make your skin crawl a little bit. But don't worry, he doesn't get a break from trauma yet, because he gets buried alive by Craven. Well, he wasn't exactly alive, he was knocked out with a concoction made by Craven, and it didn't wear off until 2 weeks passed, when Peter literally pulled himself out of a grave. He would stop Craven, who was impersonating him at the time, but nonetheless, waking up being buried alive is another trauma for the counter. But don't worry, after a clone of him, Ben Reilly, came around, he was able to essentially retire, as Ben would play hero while Peter got to spend time with the now pregnant Mary Jane. But here comes the trauma train, as the Green Goblin comes back and essentially causes Mary Jane to have an early birth. He then took Peter's potential future daughter. Needless to say, Peter and Mary Jane didn't get to be parents due to this encounter. Oh, and it's not surprising that Mary Jane and Peter were married at this point in time, but God forbid anything happened, like Mary Jane getting blown up in a plane crash. Yeah, that did happen. He struggled to accept that she had passed away, but then as soon as he did, he found out that she had been kidnapped by a villain who had been stalking her as she was a model at the time. After this, Mary Jane wanted to split up for a bit, as she needed to adjust herself, because, you know, she just got kidnapped and was presumed dead. So not only did he think that he had outright lost her, but then he did just outright lose her after getting her back, so like double trauma. A little quick fire round, nearly got sacrificed, got turned into a giant spider creature, perished twice, resurrected both times, revealed his identity to the world for Iron Man, but was turned on him later on, and Aunt May unintentionally gets hit by a sniper and gets put into a coma. Now, we'll talk a little bit more about that last one, because it goes into the One Last Day plotline, which is very important for Peter Parker's trauma. You see, Peter hunted for a way to bring Aunt May back to life, looking to Doctor Strange for a magical way, which apparently there wasn't, which I can call bull on. I mean, I've seen Doctor Strange do so much to revive people, and all of comic books. And after asking Tony Stark, he just slapped a few million so she got the best care in the hospital, which is still good. But I feel like he could have done more as well. At this point, Mary Jane and Peter were still married, and so the demon known as Mephisto would make a deal with Peter. He would bring Aunt May back to life, and everyone would forget that Peter was Spider-Man, besides Mary Jane, and his marriage to her would never happen. And in turn, their future daughter would never be born. Peter made the deal, and whilst Mary Jane and him were still in love with each other after it, they decided to just be friends as their relationship put their friends in danger, and it was probably also because of trauma. Later on, Johnny Storm, aka the Human Torch of the Fantastic Four, had died, and in the comics, him and Peter were good friends, so I'd consider that pretty traumatic. One of his last wishes was for Peter to join the Future Foundation, which was really just a renaming for the Fantastic Four because there was now way more than 4 of them. Point being, he had lost a good friend. But, you know, give it some time, and Doc Ock decides to pull some wild trauma out of his tentacles, as he would swap minds with Peter, leaving Parker in his dying body while he gets to thwip around as Spider-Man. Peter, in Otto Octavius's body, would attempt to reverse the swap, but only managed to make a weak connection. And using it, he essentially brain dumped all of his memories onto Otto. After this, Doc Ock would vow to continue Peter's journey, albeit a little bit more aggressive and less morally controlled. Now, this means that Peter's gone, right? He would have passed in the body of Dr. Octavius, right? Nope, not in the slightest. Thanks to the brain dump of memories, Peter had become a subconscious in his own body. And eventually, Doc Ock would give control back to Peter, but nonetheless, I'd probably say that it's traumatizing to be in the body of a dying man and then not be in control of your own body, leaving it in control of one of your own nemesis. Nemesis? Nemesi. Nemesis. Now, there's a few of them, so I'm going to give you another quick 3, just off the cuff. The Red Goblin ended another of his friends, Flash Thompson. Kindred straight up tortured him, and Peter was put into a coma by the UFOs, but eventually woke up. Now, this brings us to one of the traumas that almost every Spider-Man fan that's read the comics despises. Paul. Swear to God. During the story, Mary Jane had invited Peter to move in, and then Benjamin Rabin, essentially an evil dude, I don't actually know his backstory, I just know he popped up in this story, marked the 2 of them and sent them to an alternative Earth where he would hunt them. They also met a man there named Paul, and so he was building a device to try and escape. Mary Jane used said device on Peter, sending just him back and leaving her and Paul on the other Earth. Peter wouldn't sleep after this, obviously. He went hunting for a way to go back to the other world and eventually found one after like a few months. He went to a whole bunch of his friends and all that, but they kept saying no because he looked like he was out of his mind. They're horrible for that, even though he explained what happened, and it would be bizarre for what happened to have happened. But yeah, when he did get there, he found out that there was some funky time stuff going on because apparently he was gone for 4 years. It was only like a few months for him, but it was for 4 years for them. Apparently her and Paul got married on that Earth in that time and adopted kids, which were apparently on that Earth as well. And then when they got to Earth, she lived with him permanently because apparently it was a part of responsibility. But, you know, maybe she just shouldn't have done that. I know waiting 4 years is wild, but like, what? So he was about to move in with her, lived a happy life, and then bam, Paul. Fucking hate Paul. Enough to say every reader hates Paul, and I'm not sure why the writers did what they did, but it felt like the wrong decision. Not to call out the writers in that way. Pretty sure they had a reason for it. It just felt so wrong. Although later the writers would somehow access the golden ink because the progenitor. I'm gonna put the word here. You can say it. I don't want to say it. He came to Earth, looking to judge the populace, and depending on the outcome, he would end it. He would judge Peter using the form of Gwen Stacy. And after being judged worthy, obviously, he's Spider-Man, he was gifted the ability to say goodbye to the real Gwen Stacy. She would be temporarily revived, which kind of sounds horrifying to me. Just being pulled back out of the ether just so you say goodbye to Spider-Man, I guess. Although I feel like this was good enough to resolve one of the trauma points that we put up there, so we'll get rid of that. But then let's put it right back up there, because he literally gets possessed by the sins of Norman Osborn. Yeah, that's happened as well. From here on, we'll be getting into the newer issues, so if you want to avoid spoilers, feel free to leave it here, but the trauma hunt must continue. Now, we have possibly what I would say the most traumatic event for the mainline Spider-Man Peter Parker The 8 deaths of Spider-Man. Dr. Doom, the current Sorcerer Supreme, would enlist Peter's help to keep the Covenant, which is like a pact that Doctor Strange made with his demon dude where he has to fight his demon kids in a contest every other few years. But due to Doctor Strange no longer being the Sorcerer Supreme, it was supposed to be Doom who would do this for him. But I guess he just said hell nah and passed it to Peter because he didn't want to do it himself for some reason. Peter would be given a mystic power, allowing him to cast magic and the such. And he would also gain the ability to be reborn 8 times. 1 for each fight. So what would his first death be like, right? Would it be like a jab to the heart? Was he struck by lightning? Was it something that, he's probably dealt with in the past? No. It was so much worse. He was pulled atom from atom into a black hole. His body stretched and it started from his toes and ended at his scalp. To viewers, it lasts, a mere moment. But for Peter, it apparently felt like it lasted 96 hours due to the time dilation he was in. He would also be revived 1 atom at a time, which sounds totally fine, not painful at all. I'd say that was probably the worst trauma he would have ever had to have faced. And he still had 7 more deaths to go. I'm not going to get into too many of them because they were kind of more regular deaths and weren't nearly as bad as this one, which essentially ripped the band-aid off for him. But there was another one that he went through that caused him to break and literally stop being Spider-Man for a good bit. He was told to hold an orb, and that orb would show him the potential end of everyone. Like how every single person he knew, and even people he didn't know or just barely knew, could potentially die. He could see anyone from like Aunt May to like his neighbor Jimmy. I don't think his neighbor Jimmy was in there, but I wouldn't be surprised if he was. But when he gets pinned down and whipped to his end while holding the orb, seeing the end of over apparently 3 million people, he literally just gives up, which is entirely understandable. But he does eventually come back because he's Spider-Man. But nonetheless, I would say that the mainstream writers for Spider-Man just hate him or have some grudge against him or just love to torture the poor guy. But it's always to such a bizarre, unneeded degree. Like the 8 deaths run was fun and entertaining, but did we really need Paul? I would like one story when Peter just gets amazing wins, like an official marriage with Mary Jane that stays, or maybe, revive Gwen Stacy, as weird as that would be, but have him fall in love with her again and, keep her around rather than just keep reviving her and getting rid of her. Just stop torturing this poor man. As for why they do this, my assumption is that they are limited by the material that they have. You see, Spider-Man is one of Marvel's biggest moneymakers. He essentially is Marvel. You think Marvel, you think Spider-Man. But they haven't ever really done a big reset of Peter's past, as they haven't really done a big reset of the Marvel comic books. But they want to keep the main run going and continuing because it's the main run. It's the main universe. But, to keep Spider-Man feeling like Spider-Man, they have to repeat the same beats. Fall in love with Mary Jane, something bad happens, they break up, Peter perishes but gets, revived immediately afterwards. He gets possessed and turns evil and then it gets removed from him. He gets so traumatized that he stops being Spider-Man. All of these have happened over and over again because that's all Peter can do by writers' standards. Meanwhile, you have the new Ultimate Run where they got to start fresh with an older Peter, and that came out amazingly and is still going amazing as far as I'm aware. I believe if they want to refresh the mainstream Spider-Man, they should just give him a break. Put him in a happy relationship with one of his partner options, be it he gets back with Mary Jane or if he's with Black Cat for a while. Just don't pick a random character that's just popped up in the side story. Pick someone that he's been with. Have him show up in a few team-ups throughout the time. But, keep his comics as an occasional release where it's just a small story to add on and keep his thing running. And then, do a side focus on a new universe Peter, such as the Ultimate One, where you can run his story differently and put in some fresh stuff that you think will change the way Spider-Man acts. But, it's another universe, so they can't complain about them trying to change Spider-Man. Then eventually go back to the main universe of Spider-Man in the comic books and have the big reveal of, Peter's partner being pregnant. And then give him, a kind of slice of life of fatherhood and heroics. Maybe even throw in a, hey, I'm your kid from the future. I need your help, so you should come to the future with me. And have him go there and help them, and maybe throw in a CW Flash where he learns that he perished in a fight that's coming up or something. I feel like that would be a good way to refresh his character. You just got to give him a little bit of time. But that is just my suggestion. I am by no means a writer, and I don't mean to sound rude to the past Spider-Man writers. I just feel as if he gets put through the same stuff over and over just to learn the same lesson as the previous run. But yeah, I wanted to do something that wasn't a trope video again, because I wanted to diversify my content, but still kind of keep it within the same thing. Let me know your opinions on the topic and general feedback in the comments. I feel like I'll be seeing a Kamen Rider mention it down there somehow. I hope you liked this week's video. Feel free to subscribe, and while you're down there, you might as well like the video, as it helps push it into the algorithm for others to see. And of course, not sponsored. Yet. Big thanks to my members, Tina Buttercup, Crystal Kensbit, Jasmine Wilson, Wilbur Flight, and Nugsy1. I'll see you all next week.